Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Before we get started, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. Remember, we're looking to add quality people to our stable of franchisees. This is a unique franchise opportunity that's geared for aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals to add on to what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else for a couple hours in the morning, just a few mornings a week. Our franchisees operate the AmSpirit Business Connections program. The rest of their week, they are accountants, attorneys, financial advisors, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. Getting ahead of myself here. If you're interested, contact me. There's an email in the show notes, or you can use the one I provide at the end of the podcast. Today is another great guest day. It's going to be a knockout show, literally and figuratively. Anyhow, with me today is Michael Goldberg. He has helped thousands of financial advisors, insurance agents, brokers, attorneys, even people in the private equity investor space. He's helped them generate thousands of dollars through what he calls knockout networking and referral strategies, which makes him a perfect guest for the show. He's a networking strategist, author, and amateur boxer. We're going to get into that. And his firm, Knockout Networking, helps professionals, like a boxer might do in the ring, make more and better connections through networking. He has spoken at numerous conferences, including the $1 Million Roundtable, which is in the life insurance industry, and is a two-time TEDx speaker. He writes for various publications, including Huffington Post, Horse's Mouth, Advertiser's Perspective, and posts a weekly blog called the 3-Minute Rounds. Michael's online training platform, Knockout Networking University, has been licensed through corporate offices of major financial services firms, and it's used by the financial services industry, company-wide. Anyhow, his clients include Morgan Stanley, Griffin Capital, Guardian Life, Northern Trust FlexShares, and firms in the private equity and hedge fund space. When he's not speaking, 2 or 3 hours a week, because he sounds like a busy guy, or at sales meeting, he's an award-winning adjunct professor at Rutgers University and donates time to speaking to individuals, networking groups dealing with job transition. Ladies and gentlemen, weighing in at a mere 180 pounds, pulling his shorts up uncomfortably high, Michael Goldberg.
Ding, ding. And you can't even see how high my shorts are, let alone how uncomfortable they may be. So it's a great day, and I'm thrilled to be here, Frank.
Well, this is awesome. I really appreciate you being on the program. Let's put a shout out in here. Thank you, Bob Berg. I had Bob Berg on earlier, a couple months ago, and when I got off the interview with Bob, I said, Bob, can you refer me some people? And Bob, being the networker that he is, he walks his talk, had me referred to you within 30 minutes. And this has been great. I appreciate you certainly making the time.
Well, and thank you, Bob Berg. And so that's going to put some pressure on me because, being a networker and a professional in this space, that means I'm going to have to refer you some great guests. So it's like, the gauntlet is down, the pressure is on.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, I'm always looking for good people to be to interview on the program. What I want to start with is everybody's got a story, and I know you have a story. You've got a great book now, Knockout Networking, and I understand you're working on another one. We can touch on that, or I'll get you back on at some point. But nobody just kind of wakes up one day and says, "Hey, I'm going to write a book," without some sort of backstory as to how that came to be. So I want to kind of delve into that, and then from there we can kind of talk about, you're drawing these parallels between boxing, which is a sport I don't necessarily understand, generally, but you're drawing these parallels, and I want to kind of get into some of that for the audience.
Yeah, most people don't understand boxing. It's like one guy getting paid to hit another guy that's getting paid,
Right.
and and to see who's left standing. And our bodies, our brains are not really conditioned or designed to take this kind of punishment. But tough way to make a living. I'm glad I don't make a living that way. I use that as a bit of a brand and a backdrop because I do some competitive boxing in the amateur ranks. In part because I got into it when I was much older. And, being kind of an old fucker here, I'm able to do it on an amateur level and kind of compete with people that are in and around my age, in and around my experience level, and in and around my size. So that's the good news. The bad news is there's not a lot of people that are at my age, because I'm told I'm like way older than I look, that are as focused on this, on their training. So when I get in the ring, there's the forfeit that will happen, or the guy doesn't show up, or so there's that drama, and it's emotional and all that stuff, but it's still a lot of fun, and it's helped me create a brand. And I love just talking about, and the metaphor is basically boxing like networking. They're both about the connection. Boxing like networking is about the connection. So the more connections you make, obviously, in the ring, more chance you're going to win the fight. And as a financial advisor, broker, agent, planner, producer, rep, or whatever, or a banker in the private equity space, or a realtor, or whomever I might be working with, it's always going to be about the connection. And those that make the more and better connections are going to be the ones that are going to be the most successful. And that's pretty much what I teach. But the boxing message makes it really vivid for people. It's a lot of fun. I work with a lot of type A driven people, both male and female. I've had people say, well, women may not take to this boxing thing, but I haven't found that. I mean,
right.
Women, female boxing is now thriving. Everybody, especially in the New York market where I'm based, has a boxing story where it's Muhammad Ali this and Joe Frazier that. So it's really become a lot of fun. And I think more importantly, from a training standpoint, from a learning standpoint, it's helped producers in whatever space I'm focused on, mostly financial services, be able to remember the concepts that I'm sharing, make it fun, in which case they're more likely to use it, implement it, and measure it. And that's really the fun part.
Okay. How did this all come about?
The boxing or the networking, or both, or neither?
I guess, what's your backstory? What'd you start out doing?
Yeah, so I've got 20 years in the restaurant industry. So I'm a hospitality guy by trade. Okay. So when, of course, much younger, I was running restaurants and ultimately a number of restaurants, came from the kitchen. And I just had an affinity towards being able to recruit and hire people in restaurants when that's not easy to do. Turnover is very high. And on a management level, I was able to recruit, hire, and retain people at a rate that the companies I was working for had never seen. And my whole philosophy in that realm was not only to run a good operation, but to train people to be at least as good, if not better than me. And what ended up happening is they kept getting promoted, as did I. And so it created a lot of attraction. But what really stood out is, I can run an operation, and I'm pretty high energy, so that was always fun. But also I was really good at having an eye for talent and developing them to be successful in their careers. So that translated into getting involved in training and development and going back to school and getting a degree and some letters at the end of my name that represents that, which turned into me working for a training and consulting firm up in Boston. That translated into bringing in more sales and the entire sales team combined, which turned into, I should start my own business. So I did that in June of 2000. And I was focused on what I had been focused on my entire career thus far, is leadership development, that and communication skills. So I built a business and a brand around that. And then I realized, with somebody telling me, that it seems like all your business is coming through networking. And an organization called BNI, which is Business Networking International, in their Northeast region, they asked me if I would speak to about 800 people about networking. And I didn't really know what networking was. Like I kind of knew, you exchange cards, but I didn't realize I was good at it. And until somebody told me, and they wanted to book me and speak in front of all these people. So that's like, Frank, somebody asking you to speak about breathing. Can you speak for an hour to an audience of 800 people about how to breathe? So my reaction was, and I was serious about this when they were asking me if I would do it. I said, isn't networking, isn't just something you do? So the guy laughed. He thought I was making a joke. So I kind of went along with him, like, So he said, well, you seem to have a different take and a different approach, and people are drawn to you and blah, blah, and we'd like you to do this. And at the time, this is years ago, I'd never done that before. So I came up with a lofty fee, like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it for X, And so they said, okay, we can do that. So now I got to do this. So I created like 1 billion slides, and I got up in front of 800 some odd people. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, because I have no memory of this. So I put the remote down. I flipped maybe the second slide, and that was it. I was just kind of on. And I just started relating to people that I knew and telling stories and all these different things. And people were laughing, and I was making these points. And I felt, talk about the connection. I felt a connection with my audience that I had never felt before. And 45 minutes to an hour, like it was closer to 45 minutes, like went like a blip.
Yeah.
So now the other speaker person who was not a professional did not want to follow me because I was like on the moon. Like I was just in this place. So they kind of took me aside as I was winding down. They said, would you mind going like another 45 minutes to an hour, because this other guy wouldn't get up, So wow. It was like that. So now I said, to the audience who was now in the palm of my hand, what do you think? Should we do this for another hour? So now I had all these slides that I hadn't even touched yet. So now let's start my present. And that's how the whole thing started, is I was really just in this place I'd never been before. So then I thought, I'm talking about something that is really as intrinsic, as natural as breathing.
Right.
So I just thought, how could I replicate this? Like, this is what I've been meaning. This is what I've been meant to do. So it couldn't be small business people. I thought that I'm not really sure how to market to that. I'm not sure, how to really monetize that. But, who has to build a business that needs to network and has the resources to bring somebody like me in and basically sucks at it? And that became the financial services industry. So this was in 2002. I knew that in October of 2003, the Federal Trade Commission was going to roll out the Do Not Call list, the DNC.
Yeah.
I had a year to build an entire PR campaign around this. And by the way, I started boxing at that time too. So it all just kind of came together. And when that happened, the entire financial services landscape changed. And my message became powerful. It became needed. And my business at that time really took off. And that's really what happened. So it really became kind of a networking story that really just cultivated this other networking story. I mean, that's really how it played out, right? So now it played out to, I'm teaching audiences how to do this. I'm teaching advisors how to do this, to find your market, go to the right place, say the right thing, find your thing, and here's some ideas in terms of how you might do it and be successful at it.
That's a fascinating story. It's interesting from a number of levels. Certainly the networking aspect of it and what you have to say, and we'll get into it. But it's also interesting from you didn't intend to do what you did thing. I've talked to people all the time. Hey, I'm going to create the next Facebook.
Right. I wish I was that smart, but the reality is that I was struggling in my business at the time. Like I was doing okay. It was okay, I was filling my calendar, but at the time I was doing most of my work was leadership and communication, and I fell into this niche where I was running programs in sexual harassment prevention of all things. There's a story to that, but bottom line, I had this expertise. So I was being brought in by all these police departments, fire departments and municipalities. And that became my niche for a while before this whole networking thing happened. So I liked it because my dad was, NYPD and I grew up tough, but it was hard to get paid. I wasn't really getting paid great fees. And I was talking about something that wasn't really fun. I was solving problems. It was draining. And I was speaking with audiences that hated me when I got there, loved me when I left, but it was a battle. And they weren't there unless they got their overtime and all that sort of thing. So I didn't really want that dynamic of working in such a rough and tumble environment. I grew up like that, where people just want to get paid. Do I have to listen to this? I'm here talking about something that's horrible. And so I was ready to get a job. So it's like, I'm here, I've got my own business, but I'm ready to hang up the gloves because I'm hating what I'm teaching and what I'm doing, and I'm hating my clients. That's a really bad business model. So the timing worked, and it was a bit lucky where I basically got that call through a referral, and it turned into all this networking stuff, So I don't know where it would have gone had that not have happened.
Again, that's a fascinating story. I mean, the people who started Facebook and Google, they didn't start out saying, hey, Facebook is going to be what it is today. The Facebook guys just wanted to meet girls.
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
That's right.
And
why couldn't that have been you and me? Like you and I
right.
could have come up with Facebook, network book. We could have done that.
Yeah. But yeah, you were just kind of like, okay, I'll give this speech and, I'm going to get paid, and then I'm going back to this sexual harassment training, and it kind of sent you in a whole different trajectory.
And it was a speech I didn't even want to do. I was terrified. Like I don't use PowerPoint slides unless I'm doing a webinar. So I just speak, and I just kind of got my stuff down and all that. But I was terrified. I had like 1 million slides, and just the way the whole thing played out.
Right. Great. So let's talk about your book. Let's talk about networking. I mean, you've already kind of explained the main parallel between boxing is it's a boxer is more likely to be successful with more contacts and better quality contacts, and that certainly makes sense. Let's talk about that in 2 phases, I guess, and we'll see where it goes. What are some strategies in the networking realm of getting the more contacts, and then we'll touch on getting quality contacts.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So Sugar Ray Leonard, of course, everything I do is through the eyes and guise of boxing. I'm a fanatic. I mean, not only do I do it, and my office is filled with boxing memorabilia. I know some professional fighters. I mean, I follow it. I'm a historian, the whole thing. I've got this dream at some point of being a boxing analyst in the pro ranks, and I'm thinking that'll happen at some point. But Sugar Ray Leonard has a great quote where he's talking about how boxing is great, and it's always better in the ring to give than to receive. Right. And I believe that networking is kind of the same way. And I know Bob Berg has a similar with the Go Giver and all that, right? So kind of similar thing is that, networking is all about really contributing. But I kind of take it into a different direction. Is I feel that the best networkers, the ones that you really want to speak with and the ones that you're more likely to connect with in the ring, are the ones focused on learning, helping. Right. That's how I define networking. Networking is a proactive, although sometimes reactive approach to meeting people to potentially learn and help them, if you can and if you want to, as in if you like them and there's a connection. Right. So if you're focused on learning, helping, great people, they tend to help you right back. And that's networking. So it creates kind of a nice little light sparring, let's get our work in sort of dynamic where it should be like a we thing, not a me thing. Like when I'm sparring with my sparring partner, who, by the way, is way better than me. He's the Diamond Glove the 165-pound Diamond Glove champion of New Jersey. So what's really funny is that he's a great kid, and he competes. He wants to go pro. So we spar. So we do this on Saturdays, right? Typically, we'll spar on a Saturday. And he lives in my town, and he's dyslexic, so he doesn't have a driver's license. So his brother drops him off. We spar. He puts a pretty good, hurting on me, and then I have to drive him home. Do you know how badly that sucks? So I've got this kid, like, shut up, kid, But what's cool is that he's not looking to hurt me, and I'm not looking to hurt him. Like, he's way better, although I'm bigger, stronger, right? But the whole thing is that he looks to stay a click ahead of me so we can get our work in. And I look at networking the same way, is that you want to stay sort of right where with the person that you're connecting with, maybe stay a click or two ahead of them, because it's not about winning the fight. It's about getting your work in. It's about sparring. It's about the exchange and learning from it. So Angelo is looking to get me better. So when I fight somebody my own level, right, that I'm going to be better. And it's kind of the same thing as networking, learning, helping. And if you have that philosophy, you tend to attract other people that have that similar philosophy. So imagine being in a room where you have learning, helping, I'd like a second helping going on constantly. That's a pretty fun room to be in, and you get something out of it by contributing something to it.
And I find that when people find individuals of like mind, and I think what turns people off from networking is they run into people who are taking, and they just assume everybody's like that. And what I tell them is that in time, you're going to build your so-called portfolio with good people, people who get it.
You know, and I make a very important distinction, of course, in financial services with advisors and brokers. You have to do this because they're conditioned to just hit their numbers. They think if they go to an event that everybody there must need life insurance, everybody there must need financial planning or an annuity, or, you know, let's talk assets under management, or, you know, and that's not why they're there, right? They're there to build their business, you know. So the whole learning, helping thing. I mean, imagine going to a room where everybody's just pitching their products and services to one another, and they assume that everybody in that room is their prospect, and they're not.
Yeah.
And that's what makes networking awkward when you go to what I'll call a low-level event, where it's just come one, come all. There's no vetting process. And people, you know, maybe with the best intentions, are there to just sell their stuff. And of course it's intimidating, because who's going to outsell whom? And, you know, very little business is done that way. It just ends up being more of the same. You know, let's shoot business cards at one another. You know, it's funny. I co-lead and co-own a networking group called the Networking Group. And I've been doing this with a partner in New York City for the last 6 years. We put almost 100 people in a room every other month. They're vetted, and there's a process that we have so you're networking properly. And it's amazing what's happening. In fact, we had to now develop a group in Philadelphia. And we're developing, you're a franchise guy, we're developing a franchise around this. And,
yep.
But it's really with this whole learning, helping culture and a vetting process where you're putting great people in the room and you're creating an infrastructure for them to go to the right place, say the right thing, and meet the right people. And it's creating a lot of attraction right now. Whereas it's now this little side hustle, this little side business that I started for fun really is now turning into something. And that's interesting. But I think if it was just another room, Frank, where you just put people in and here, you know, have at it, it's just another meeting.
Right. Well, I think people head off to networking events, or you probably see it. Somebody is sending them out to networking and not giving them the whole story.
Or any story. Go get business, kid. You're a brand new financial advisor. Really, you got your license. You got your Series 6 and 7 and 63. All right, here's your business cards. Go sell some life insurance.
Right.
Bye.
Well, and many of the people who are sending them out grew up in a time where, when I say grew up, started their career in a time where it was totally different, where you could call, where you could, going to events kind of worked. And I think it just gets stale in time.
Right. But then the other thing is, and I talk a lot about this, it's not just going to events, but going to the right events for the right reason, saying the right thing with the right mindset. It's all about being right. A boxer gets in the ring. If they're not right in the head, they're going to lose that fight. They may have all the physical attributes in the world or the best product in the world, but if your head ain't right in the ring, that's where it starts. It's the same thing as an advisor or any sales producer. If your head ain't right, you're not going to be selling very much, and you're going to be that guy that people avoid.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what makes people quit, because they go in the wrong way and they're chasing people away. And then they're coming away saying, well, that didn't work.
That's right. Yeah. And what makes people quit in the financial services industry is the fact that, and that's if they were hired for the right reason anyway as an advisor, because typically, a broker dealer wants to just, hit their numbers, right? So they're going to just recruit almost anybody. And some firms are better than others, of course,
sure.
But that's kind of the stereotype in the industry. They get licensed because you got to be smart to be an advisor, right? And so you get licensed, you got to learn your stuff. But then after that, nobody really teaches these poor folks about where to go, what to say with whom, and how to really see more people and say the right things. Like that whole learning, helping component isn't there. So it's like, no wonder they fail. No wonder they don't know what to do with their day once they're licensed. So they're going to the next cocktail party, chamber mixer, golf outing, conference convention, just, pitching I've got the greatest life insurance product in the world. And you know what? So does everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for most people, life insurance doesn't mean anything until you pass,
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah. It's a hard thing to sell. It's a hard and most financial products are. This is where I live, is in this place, and they're important. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
These financial products are really important. Retirement products, life insurance, annuities to a certain extent, certainly sound financial planning. So if financial advisors were better at networking and better at connecting, think of how many more people they could help that really need some of this insight. I look at that, more of a holistic approach, where there are people that do need these services and do need this expertise. Figure out a way to get that out there in a way where you're able to accomplish that goal. And by the way, grow your business.
let's shift here real quick and talk about quality connections.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, if you get in the boxing ring, know enough about boxing, and you're just jabbing little pokes, you're making a lot of contact, but you're really not doing a whole lot.
You know, it's funny you say that. There was just a fight that nobody knows about that just happened. I know that this is going to air, in the future, but this just happened. Sergey Kovalev, who is one of the best boxers out there, just fought in Russia. And unless you're a boxing fan, you're not going to know who he is, right? But he's the crusher. He's kind of a big deal if you're about, right? So he actually just got a knockout, knocked the guy out in the 11th round with a jab. You never see that. The guy was so exhausted, and Kovalev is a power puncher anyway. He just flicked this jab, perfect, and the guy out, and so it's funny you say that. But sometimes if you jab in the right way and you get that opening, I mean, that's really what it is. You need that opening in order to make that great connection, and that's always what it's about. It's always about making that great connection, for sure.
Well, but even still, it's not, the stars were aligned with that. I mean, he was obviously prepared, and
yes,
it wasn't the first jab he threw, but it does come down to, it was a quality contact.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, like you said, people go to events and it's, they're like blackjack dealers. They're just firing out cards. And that's great. Michael told me I need to make more connections.
Right.
But it really comes down to quality. Yeah. What do you see as quality connection?
So a quality connection is, and I put numbers around this. So when I'm speaking to groups, I often say, so I talk about learning helping, right? And that's really what networking is. And I share that. So I think I'm a pretty good networker when I go to events as well. And I go half the time I'm going to collect stories, and just because it's fun, and of course other things come out of it, right? But I truly only connect with about a third of the people that I meet. About a third. So if I meet 10 people, I probably only really connect with 3 or 4, right? And by really connect, I mean like you had me at hello. Like it's easy to go back and forth. The conversation is very even. You're laughing. It's not like I got to put my networking face on. It's not like networking speak. Like you're having a great conversation. You're having a hoot where it's easy. You don't want it to stop. That's a quality connection. Like, just off the bat, right? Upon first glance. So the other 6 or 7 people or so that I may not connect with, it's not that it's bad. It's just that for whatever reason, it's just not a good vibe, for a multitude of reasons. Maybe they're not looking at this as learning helping. Maybe they're looking to sell me a product or service, or maybe they're there for social reasons, or whatever it is, right? So it doesn't matter. But a quality connection is when you had me at hello, it feels right. You got to know that when it feels right for you, like I could talk to this guy all day, what a cool dude, that they feel the same way about you. It's usually a two-way street there, In fact, when it's not a good connection, it's usually a two-way street too, right? So I talk about the one-thirder dynamic. Is just focus on the one-thirders. Focus on the people that you truly have this learning, helping connection. And at the start of the event is as you're kind of getting to know one another, it's really about exchanging contact information and talking about what next steps might look like. And those next steps is typically, let's learn more about one another to see how we might be resources for one another, or can refer one another, or wherever it might go. So it takes some time. It does take some development to get into a relationship. But that's only truly going to happen with about a third of the people that you meet if you're good. If you're good. If you're not good, of course, it's going to be a much lower, point of entry. No question about it. And it ain't going to be fun, which is why a lot of people, I'm out networking. It's so, it's so fake. I don't get a lot out of it. It's because the strategy, the headset isn't necessarily where it needs to be.
Gotcha. To kind of wrap up here, what would be a good referral for you? How could people listening help you? And then how could they contact you?
Well, a good referral from me is, so I'm always looking to get hired by financial firms that are running a sales meeting, or that realize that their advisors and brokers aren't producing the way that they could, or aren't marketing it the way they could, or a firm that is really focused on recruiting more financial advisors and top flight talent, because networking is the best way to recruit, right? So if a firm is struggling with that, and most are, and they're looking to hit their targets, that's really where my expertise is really teaching, training, and putting systems in place for a general agency, a broker dealer, life insurance company, or an RIA, or an FMO, an IMO, private equity, hedge funds, this is all jargon, but basically organizations in the financial space, even banks, that's important, and they're serious about putting measures in place to improve on their recruiting and on their production. And I guess the best way to get in touch with me, and I've got a book, as you had mentioned, so it's Knockout Networking. I'm like holding it up here like you could see it. It's Knockout Networking, so hardcover book. Really proud of it. It's got a lot of great principles in it, and I've got a new version of it coming out in March of 2020 at a store near you.
And don't say anything,
near you.
Don't say anything. We're going to get you back on to talk all about it.
Then, if you want to, write me. I'm Michael Goldberg, Knockout Networking. You can find me on LinkedIn, or info@konetworking.com. And we can connect. I'm all about the connection, so I would love to connect.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.